but I would have to say specifically into legal empowerment, it started in a prison at Lowell Correctional Institution.
Okay, cool. So, we are. I mean, I should probably let you do the honors here, but we're definitely going to be doing a show here.
Yes.
Can you talk about the title of the show and just what we hope to get accomplished here?
Absolutely. So we are going to be launching a show titled "Say Our Names Now." This show really it has a personal background for me. I started Participatory Defense, in the state of Florida. I was trained in Participatory Defense in 2017. It wasn't until 2019 that we were able to get it off the ground. And I started Participatory Defense because I have a brother serving 30 years mandatory in the Florida Department of Corrections. And now I have my last brother, my little brother, is going through the pretrial system here in Alachua County and being charged, for some horrific charges, although he was, at work. Wow. And he was viciously attacked. And so I've always considered myself to be someone that, loves the law and, try to find solutions inside of the law. And then especially this, past year, we've seen the George Floyds. We've seen, a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement really to, a cusp. But we're tired of having to wait until somebody's dead. Until somebody's sentenced to a life, time in prison. Right. I served time with women doing life. It didn't really hit me. How many people are doing life? I would say about 80% of my jailhouse lawyers membership are people serving life, sentences for either protecting themselves or against violence, caused by police. And so Say Our Names Now is a proactive approach to protecting, Black people and keeping our people safe. As a sister, as well as a mom raising a Black son, I mean, we can't wait anymore. So we're gonna say the names, but we're gonna say them now.
All right. Yeah. So, wow, that was really good. But you said I want you to talk a little bit about, because it seems a lot of times that we don't learn about the law until we're after we're charged with something, or we know somebody's charged with something. But how can we? Is there something that we can do to kind of like make it a little more widespread or well known to the average ordinary citizen that the law is protecting them as well? Because I think a lot of times we especially a lot of times, especially in the courtrooms, with the different vernacular and a lot of the Latin terms, it's like you're in a foreign land. What is going on inside here? And a lot of times we learn about this process, like I said, only after we're involved in it. So how can we make this more of a common thing? More, just take it from there.
Yeah, so 3 things I have in mind.
Okay.
First of all, I think it's a shame that we start, like you said, which is so true. I've spoke about this so many times before that in prison, when women would come into the law library, that will be the first time that we really start to see how law and policy actually shaped our day-to-day lives. Most people assume that in prison, people are just working to get out, but even I was, fighting to keep my state license. You have people that are dealing with immigration. You have people that are dealing with civil issues, constitutional right issues. And so I never understood, what those laws were. Even through my own experience, it was my first arrest, as an adult, to get 8 years. And I remember going to court maybe twice. Wow. Inside of that. So even in the courtroom, no one, was teaching the law. And so for me, human rights, that's what we have to start. If we start with criminal justice and criminal laws, then we're already doing the same thing that our accusers do, labeling us, as criminals. Wow. 2021, Leah is going to be on the ground, no clipboards, no organization, but we as community members have to be talking in a language that we can understand. Right. And actually connecting it, to our everyday issues, what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we think. And so human rights is where we're going to be starting in our local community to really start inspiring. I like to say we don't teach people to be citizens, we inspire people, to be citizens. As well as I look forward to to just being able to open up those doors. But then I'm very proud to be a part of a national movement. Leah is the first participatory defense hub in the state of Florida, and Leah is a community organizing, participatory defense is a community organizing tool. No lawyers, we're all community members, community organizers that work directly with family members who have incarcerated loved ones to be able to get the best outcome, inside of their loved one's case. So we will talk with, the lawyers and, attempt to work with the lawyers as best that we can. But we're wrapping around that table or in a Zoom meeting, unfortunately, sometimes, and discussing the law. I know it, pretty well. And so it's one of the things I love to do is teach it. And then we're going to make sure that we have just more legal empowerment tools in prisons, in jails, in Project Youth Build, at Eastside High School, in probation offices, in social services offices. No matter where our people is, right. There'll be an opportunity for us to be able to connect because the law is everywhere.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Leah and what compelled you to start it. You are the organizer, the director, the founder, right? So let's talk a little bit about Leah and what compelled you to start it, and a little more. I know you just talked about it a lot, but a little more on the goals and accomplishments that you want to accomplish.
Yes. So Leah started with law school. I came out of prison and I knew I was a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer so bad, and I wanted to go to the University of Florida. I'm born and raised from here. I never even understood what UF was, until about 2 years, really, after my release. But I wanted to go to law school. After I got my associate's degree, that's when the universities and the schools started telling me, that, hey, you're a felon. You need to be looking at business. You should be doing all these other things. And I started researching. I needed to just find one other person in the state of Florida who had become, a lawyer that wasn't in their 90s, 80s, years of age. And I found a woman, Veronica Lemia. She's still a very good friend of mine right here in Florida, has her own practice down south. And so I reached out to her. She called me back and she told me, that I could. And so through that conversation, she introduced me to Desmond Meade.
Okay.
And that's how I then got involved with Amendment 4. And that was the first time, to be honest, that I heard about the 13th Amendment. I mean, this is after a 7-year run of jailhouse lawyering. The first time that I even learned what our city commissioners' roles were and really understood, not just what the law was, but who are the people that, are governing us, as people. And so that next week after I met Desmond, I came home. First time ever on a plane. I haven't stopped flying since. I went to a convening for the National Council for Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. And that changed my life to see women, on the outside, screaming, free her. And I knew it. Ending mass incarceration of women and girls may sound like something big and huge, but I believed in Andrea James. I believed in our sisters, right? That power that I felt in that room. And so I took off. And the next year, I won the Soros Fellowship, and that allowed me to have the funding to be able to create the Jailhouse Lawyers Initiative. And so through working on the Jailhouse Lawyers Initiative, I went to Europe last year.
Wow.
And I went to Budapest, and I went to a legal empowerment training with a group called NAMATI, the Global Legal Empowerment Network in OSF. And that was the first time, I was the only, I think it was 3 people from America there. 10 countries represented, all lawyers, all amazing high-level people. I did not even feel worthy, to be there. But they were talking about this concept of legal empowerment. And legal empowerment, says that a person has to know and understand the law in order to be able to use and practice it to become shapers and transformers of the law. And I witnessed that so much, through my own work as a jailhouse lawyer. And so they also had this practice of community paralegal. I got my associate's degree in paralegal studies, but in the U.S. it looks different than abroad. Internationally, community paralegals are community organizers that live in those communities that do have legal knowledge.
Right.
And then they're working, to not just have a service, for people in their communities, but to partner with, to build up those communities, to be decision makers, as well as shapers of the law. And so I came back in the Jailhouse Lawyers Initiative, as well as I was, working on Participatory Defense. And so that's how we became the Legal Empowerment and Advocacy Hub.
So Participatory Defense is community collective defense from the people.
From the people.
Participatory, right.
Participatory defense. And so some of the things that we do, for example, if someone was arrested and mom called us, we would be able to help mom navigate each step of the criminal justice system. When you don't have any information, when the lawyer is not returning your call, when the lawyer, is not communicating with you in a way that is, dignified, we're able to, help smooth that process out to be able to, answer questions. Also, we help families, cope with the loss, the grief of my loved one being incarcerated.
You often hear that the family is incarcerated as well with the perpetrator.
And these are the primary caretakers.
Right.
And let's be real, we don't talk about that. We talk about the number and statistics of Black people who are incarcerated, but we're not talking about that these are the pillars, of the families. And so we help families cope, as well as we humanize our loved ones inside of that courtroom, so that those judges know this isn't just another number, another statistic. This is a father, a brother, a sister, a mother, a community member.
Wow.
And we're willing to do whatever it is that it takes to, repair, as well as just prevent and to bring our people home.
How would one access you guys? How do I, aside from listening to the show here, how would I even know about your service?
So we do have a website, Leah for Justice, and that is all spelled out in words.com, where you can learn about the Jailhouse Lawyers Initiative, Participatory Defense, and it has a link in there where you can either sign up to be a volunteer, or you could always have a conversation with us about a case that's currently going on. And just also so folks know, we're very much looking forward to, in 2021, being able to provide support for people who are already sentenced in prison.
Wow.
So jailhouse lawyering, right, is what I do. So post-conviction, clemency, there's not a space in Florida that your loved one can be tucked away in this system and we're not able to get to them.
Wow, that's a blessing. Let's talk a little bit about, I want you to describe the National Jailhouse Lawyers Institute and what that is.
So the Jailhouse Lawyers Initiative, that's my pride and joy. I'll never forget my good friend Dawn. We were sitting down, I was showing her all my plans, and it was like, I believed in Desmond Meade's, vision. I believed in Andrea James' vision of the National Council, and I was going to live my life for both of them to see, people with felony convictions get that right to vote, as well as ending mass incarceration of women and girls. But at the bottom, it was this little tiny space. And it was, when I finished all of that, what was my own vision? And so we typically say that those closest to the problem is those closest to the solution.
Okay.
Every prison, it is a prisoner's constitutional right, an incarcerated person's constitutional right to have access to the courts. And prisons fulfill that constitutional right by having law libraries, where people can go in and be able to have, access to legal, documents and information, as well as the institutions train what we call law clerks to be able to provide, assistance and support for our brothers and sisters on the inside.
Correct.
And so the law library was so important to me because, like I said before, that was a lot of times where people, really got a chance to not just survive, but to really, dig into yourself.
Examine the law for the first time a lot of times.
And learn it, as well as storytelling. Jailhouse lawyers aren't just law clerks. They're your peers. We're somebody that, done been through that fire. We're someone that understands. And so, to me, especially now that I know about restorative justice and practices, the law library is probably the single most restorative place, on a prison, at a prison institution. It's the one place where even youthful offenders come. I was the confinement law clerk, so I went to Tiffany Cole. I went to death row's door. I went to closed confinement, in addition to serving 1/3 of the incarcerated population, at Lowell. And so the law library and jailhouse lawyers is so important, because when we look at that number of people that are going in and out of the prison system, that support and that knowledge and that empowerment is not happening, so much on the outside. Thank God we have programs and, movements like Participatory Defense, but the law library is now a place, through the Jailhouse Lawyers Initiative, that we can really bring legal empowerment and embed it into the lives and the hearts and the minds of our people, so that when we return back to community, we don't have to know all the law. We don't have to be a lawyer. But I love, Angela Davis has a quote that says, "I will no longer focus on the things that I can't change, but I'm going to change the things that I can no longer accept." And so jailhouse lawyers, we're Army. We're in the inside. We're in the deepest layer of the criminal justice system, and we're transforming that painful experience into a knowledgeable experience, so that our brothers and sisters can come back home prepared to be shapers and transformers of the law.
Okay, so tell me, how does the process work? You guys go into jails, or you train people that are already in? How does it work?
So, unfortunately, because I'm formerly incarcerated, I don't get to go into even our local jail. All of the things that I've achieved, right?
No, you can't
at home, I still can't go in there and speak life, right? To my brothers and my sisters on the inside. Same with the prisons. And so, next best thing, we partner with law schools all over this country.
Nice.
And so right now, for example, NYU is my founding partner. We have a student group called EPIC. And so EPIC, we redeveloped the law clerk training that was being used, inside of New York. And so building that together to make sure that it actually includes all of the skills, the leadership, the tools that jailhouse lawyers need. And those law students, they go in and they actually do, the training. And it works so well because I always say you can't teach, diversity, especially cultural diversity. That's something that has to be, created through relationship.
Right.
So those law students, they get to have a learned experience. I mean, they learn so much as well. So it's a shared learning experience, a shared power experience. And so we're also building up the next future lawyers,
That's what they'll take for the rest of their life.
For the rest of their lives. They take it into their work, and that's how we get it on the inside.
Awesome. On your website, you had a quote, it's like a tagline. It said, and you talked about this a little bit already, but I want you to expound upon it a little bit. Unleashing justice, reclaiming humanity. Talk about that.
So, a few years ago, I did a talk at the Hippodrome for the Voices of Gainesville.
I saw that.
And it dawned on me as I was talking that behind me, it said criminal justice. And it was like my heart just burst out laughing. Like, who would have ever imagined that it would be those criminals, that would be at the forefront of actually bending that arc of justice towards, people. And so I don't think that sometimes we as a collective community understand that when anyone's incarcerated, it doesn't just affect, that family. It affects our community, as well. The talent, the skills, the love, the compassion. I am able to love, not because of my outside community. I mean, when I got out of prison, I would have the first year I was out at college, I got married, I had my kids, I had my own place, everything they said I couldn't, but I still found myself wanting to go back to prison. And it was the weirdest thing, but that was the first place I felt love. That was the first place that I felt free. And so to me, justice isn't just the laws. We can have good laws and policy all day long. It's going to come down to the people, that are in place to enforce, and govern those laws. And so when I think about justice, I think about all of the countless women I left behind. I think about all of my men, that I get a chance to love on the outside, as well as, my jailhouse lawyers. And so we're unleashing justice in the form of people power.
Damn.
And we're reclaiming our humanity because, I used to say on the campaign that it was the campaign of second chances. But the truth is, some of us never had a first chance. And so the narrative, the data is not true. It's just a small view of who we are and what we're capable of. So I'm excited that the more people that we get a chance to just, bring value into our community and model true humanity, then we will have just a world, that we can be proud to live in.
Let's talk a little bit about. I want you to kind of walk me through a procedure of me being a receiver of one of your clients. Like, so I'm in jail. I got a charge. And I have my family to contact Leah. What happens next?
Right. So that will be who we would call a loved one.
Okay.
So if a loved one, you are someone's loved one, we don't have no clients.
I'm sorry. Nice.
It's cool.
Thank you for that.
No problem.
I appreciate it. I didn't know what to say.
Yes. And there's actually a tool that we use. Anyone can go to the National Participatory Defense website. It's just participatorydefense.org. And I believe there's over 30 hubs now nationally. And we have a tool called the First 24, which really educates, family members, community members about what you do within the first 24 hours of arrest. I used to look at that list and think it was so simple until going through this past year and a half with my brother and seeing how hard it is. But we get the phone call from mom, from girlfriend, from whoever. And so from there, we will have a discussion about locating will be the first thing we want to do is locate where the loved one is inside of the criminal justice system. So if you had already gone to first appearance and there was an arraignment that happened, and let's just say your bond is, $50,000 and you can't afford that. So the first thing we do, we walk through the process. How could we get that bond reduced? How could we go a little bit further than court services to really understand who you are to the community, what you were doing, before incarceration, as well as what potentials and opportunities, exist for you as well. I remember I always said I'd never come back to Gainesville, but when God pushed me back here, eventually I declared myself, and I was a nobody, I guess, at the time. But I said, I just told my brother, I'm the watchdog of Alachua County.
All right. That's
and the League of Women Voters was the first organization that I really started to make a relationship with. And I started making relationships all over the community. So now that I have those relationships, we can also reach out, to different levels of community and create a wraparound support, for the individual. And then we walk it through. Of course, it's the loved one who is incarcerated's, choice on whether, in our court system, you either plead to the judge, you plead guilty to the state, or you go to trial, or it's dismissed. And so we walk with that family through that entire process. And using whatever tools, we have, whether that's a social bio, which can be a video or a packet, that shows, just the breadth of this individual's, life, as well as, communicating ourselves, to the court. A lot of times I do feel responsible to share with the court because the intention that our larger community sees is so different than the intention, that we have inside of our isolated community neighborhoods right here in Alachua County.
Right. What are some immediate issues locally as far as criminal justice reform is concerned? Some things that we can fix fairly quickly or easily, not necessarily easily, but that are just blatant things that we can definitely tackle pretty fast.
So, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, because when I started with the campaign, started working with Amendment 4, I remember telling Desmond, nobody cares about voting.
Mm.
You know, like that was nothing I ever done. That was nothing, you know, I grew up in Linton Oaks, Cedar Ridge, you know, come from Cambridge, you know, even highlights. And so, it was just like, no, you know, that didn't make any sense. But we have the very state attorney. There's only one. A lot of times we say state attorneys, but there's one elected state attorney, prosecutor. There's one elected public defender inside of Alachua County. We have to vote, and we have to make sure that these are individuals who are going to work with us and see us, you know, first of all, as people. Love my experience at the River Phoenix Center for Peace Building, because it was one of the places where, you know, I recognized that education, right, doesn't always make you the expert of a person's life, you know, in their choice of life. I travel to law schools all over this country, and it breaks my heart when they tell me we don't train lawyers to be lawyers. If that's the case, why am I out here going into debt and killing myself and not seeing my children to go to law school to be able to, you know, be recognized and seen as somebody that can provide support? And so we have to be responsible for the judges that we choose. We vote for them.
You do.
We vote, you know, for law enforcement. Typically, when we think of the court system, we don't see how the law enforcement is an extended, you know, part of that. It is the officers who's writing these police reports that then goes to the state, who then gets to decide. And I'm telling you, we have to show up. We have to show up inside of these courtrooms. These are public spaces. No one can stop you. I know with COVID and things like that, it has, you know, pumped the brakes, but we have to be in there. I mean, public defenders it seems like everyone in the courtroom is incarcerated to the narrative. You know, prosecutors and judges shouldn't have more power than our public defender. I never understood that. And I mean, I learned the law, of course, from a law library from my desk, but the law should be what the law says it is. And for a lot of us, you know, even inside of my brother's, you know, case, and I'm excited about this show because we typically just talk about the violence, you know, caused on black people by the law, but we're not talking about the violence that is caused on black people by the actual written law. And not so much the law, but the misuse of it.
Policy.
You know, from policy, even social services, you know, so we have to be there. And that's what I love about participatory defense. Because we're in the courtroom, we're not just saying it's racist. We're not just saying, you know, the status quo is biased. But when you're in there and you can see how this judge is ruling, when you can actually see it and get close up to it, it does something for you. So we got to get uncomfortable with criminal justice. I think we've all just, you know, generationally, I mean, this is the same old thing, right? That has just now come to where we're at. And it's time to get uncomfortable. And we have to hold people accountable. You can call your elected official. Our public defender, Stacey Scott. I mean, go and talk with her. The University of Florida has a public defenders clinic that actually, you know, works with, it trains, you know, people going into the public defenders, you know, programs. And so even me, I work with future state attorneys and future public defenders all the time. I don't have a law degree or anything like that. So we got to stop sitting back. And if, you know, and be real, because I'm tired. It seems like we have so much support and resources on the outside. However, my brothers, you know, we talk about Trayvon Martin, you know, rest in peace, and George Zimmerman, you know, and the rallying that went around self-defense, you know, and the rallying was so different, you know, than my brother. Self-defense should be self-defense, right? The law should be the law. And so when it's nobody standing up in there, they treat us any type of way. So vote, but also show up and do not be afraid. I just learned this 30 days ago. Don't be afraid to speak truth and to speak your lived experience to these elected officials, because we live worlds and worlds and worlds apart.
And ultimately they work for us.
You think that?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's kind of like we get away from that.
Yeah.
I want you to talk about your brother, Mr. Irvin. if not anything else, at least talk about how we can support what's going
on. And, you know, it's almost like it died, but March of 2019, there was an incident at the Krispy Kreme, and so my brother Julius Irvin, that's my little brother, was involved in that. And you know, it's crazy. We just gotten off the phone like hours before. I had just got my dream apartment in Alachua, the city of Alachua. He was so excited. Just came back from New York, excited, you know, about being in Gainesville. Even though I've had a hurtful relationship with Gainesville, my brother truly is a leader and loves, you know, Gainesville. And so we were able, the courtroom filled up. I mean, it was standing room only to get his bond. His bond was $700,000. He was charged with second-degree attempted murder. However, the state increased it to first-degree attempted murder because he exercised the right to take depositions, which is his lawyer to be able to talk to the people, right?
How dare he?
That were there for him to be able to, you know, have a defense. And so my brother was at work. There's videos. There's testimony from all employees there that a non-employee came in, you know, and viciously attacked my brother. He was also racially, you know, assaulted before this attacker came there. And it hurts me because the media told a different story. You know, even though there's tapes and even though there, you know, is testimony, our media jumped in and told the story, you know, about my brother and what happened and who he is. That does not reflect at all, you know, the videos and the testimonies of that incident. And so we now are preparing. It's over a year later. And so although everyone showed up inside of that courtroom, you know, to get that bail drop from $700,000 to $100,000, thank God I had a friend in New York who was able to, you know, pay for the bail. There's been no one else since then. I constantly begged my brother to get, you know, counseling. He was a victim of a crime as well. He was a victim, viciously beaten,
right.
You know, to the point that he then had to, you know, defend himself from underneath someone. I mean, I can't imagine. I've watched my brother, you know, continue to fight. The New York Times just recently did an amazing spread on him. He was homeless. Yeah. But most people didn't think about he was homeless because he can't get work when you got first-degree attempted murder. Right. Just because he got the gold teeth and he may have the tattoos, he says he calls it his uniform. Right. You know, to do the work that he does. But this has just severely affected him. Trial was supposed to start on Monday, but it has been postponed. We are just asking, you know, community, because of COVID, the courtroom can't be as packed on the inside as we want it to be, but we will be you know, it's just, I'm going to be standing up for my brother. Absolutely. And so anybody who wants to stand, you know, with me and stand outside of that courtroom so that he can hear, you know, I'm not planning on being in the courtroom. It's been hard just to be in the lawyer's office, you know, with them. And so stand with us. We'll definitely keep everyone updated, you know, around when the trial's going to be. Also, we're going to just be having some different things that are going to be, you know, that we're going to be rolling out. So if you're interested, definitely you can, you know, hit me up, inbox me, you know, on my Facebook. Right now, my brother, he's facing life in prison. Wow. Life in prison. You know, my mother, I will be the only child, you know, that she has left. And so right now my brother's resting. You know, it took us over a year. We just been kind of ignoring it. You know, it's the elephant in the room. When you're a strong person, right, people just expect you to know what to do. And like I said, even up to 30 days ago, you know, I've been afraid. I've been asking these questions privately, you know, but afraid, you know, to do the very things I just said that we should do. Right. So I'm excited to be standing out to make sure that our court, Judge Polk, this prosecutor, you know, understand, you know, who he is. And so we also got to remember there's public record Research, Alachua County Clerk of Court. If you want to know what's going on in your communities, and we should, we definitely need to start exercising our right to public information, and then we need to start questioning, the people that we put in place to keep us all safe.
Wow. Let's talk a little bit about access, because I know people definitely who are listening definitely want to, maybe be involved themselves. You said you're on Facebook. Can you spell your name real quick, just for the people?
Yes, I have an H in my name. Jhody is spelled completely different, and yes, it is Jhody, but you can reach me on Facebook, Jhody, last name Polk, Polk, or check out our Facebook page, Leah, the Legal Empowerment and Advocacy Hub, and that's Justice for Florida Now is the @ for the Facebook page.
Right, and the website's leahforjustice, all one word, .com.
.com.
Just how it's spelled.
Yes.
Cool. I want to ask you one last question. Actually, a couple more questions, but one I want you to kind of touch on, because until my experience with law enforcement, I never even heard the word recidivism. I hope I said that right. So can you talk about recidivism, what it is, what we can do to, how we're affected by it? I've never even heard that word. I'm like, what the hell is, why do they keep saying that?
You got me excited.
But let's go right, let's go in.
Because even me, I remember the first time I learned about recidivism was in prison. There was this statistic where they said if a child had one parent that was incarcerated, I think it was like a 40, pretty high chance that they'd be incarcerated. But if they had two, parents that had been incarcerated, it jumped up to like 70%.
Wow.
And so my son is a Brockington. And so, both his mom, you know what I'm saying, and his dad, has been, incarcerated. And so when I came home, I was determined to beat recidivism. Recidivism is the repeat. Someone, when you repeat and you go back, into the criminal justice system.
It's going to prison and going back to prison.
And then going back.
Okay, cool.
And so, even in prison, we look at the people with the short time, or just people that came in and out, recidivism. And it's like, how the hell, if I ever get out of here, I'm never, going back. But again, recidivism is not because poor people or bad people or black people can't get it right. Recidivism is when a person does all the work of rehabilitation, whatever you want to call it. For me, it was self-discovery, and then come back to a community that you can't practice being a human being in.
So you look at recidivism as a failure of society in a lot of ways.
It is definitely. I mean, I used to cry whenever, life is tough, right? And I used to scream, I used to kick, because I had done everything I thought that would make me a better person, that would make me a worthy, valuable person. I had a car. I even married a white man. You know what I'm saying? I had my children within 24 hours. I'm divorced.
That's a joke.
I'm divorced.
Shout out to my white brothers out there. I'm joking.
But did everything. I got into college. I was doing everything, but I still was treated, I was still invisible. Even on my jobs, I was noticed, my first job was Motel 6, and I worked my way from housekeeper to front desk manager, and it just became evident that no matter what I did, it was never going to be enough to fit into this, community. And when I said I'd never be, when I caught myself saying, I just want to go back, like, I'm going back. Casey Walpole was a Buddhist that used to come into the prison. And that's the first time I learned about meditation. My good friend Kelly Lumadou, she's serving life right now at Lowell. I'm bringing my friend home. She took me to one of those, classes. And I will never forget that he taught us, told us that if you're thinking about it and you're feeling it and you're saying it, it's just a matter of time before you do it. And one day I caught myself and I had to choose. Jhody, is you going back or you're not? And when I said I was never going to be incarcerated again, I meant that. And I'm not just talking about physical, incarceration.
You talk about that a lot.
I want to be me. I love NBA. I love me some Kevin Gates. I remember I used to tell Jeffrey, the executive director of RPCP, don't be mad when I come in here and I go get my goals. My brother Julius, he, you know, the only reason he got them before me is because I got locked up. But like, that's my culture. This is my body, you know, and it doesn't change, you know, who I am. I'm tatted, you know, and so like I like certain things and I could never be me. And so recidivism is when a person cannot be themselves inside of their own community out of fear, you know, of someone else and their perception.
Right.
And so prison was safer. Sugar Hill looked just like a lot of the camps that I slept at.
Yeah.
You know, these neighborhoods and these communities where we isolate, you know, criminalize black people is so, you know, parallel to what we see in prison. So recidivism, you know, really is the safer choice. And to be honest, it's sad that prison can be safer for some people than their own local neighborhood.
Talk about that. Two things. Talk about the weird, kind of eerie feeling you have when you're coming back into society from jail. You know, a lot of people feel out of place or just like they don't belong. And then talk about, if you could, I want you to talk about what it is that made you want to go back. Because a lot of people who are just more, I won't say comfortable in that environment, but that environment is more embracing, you know what I mean, to them. So if you can just kind of, whatever your thoughts are on those two things.
And also, you know, I've learned a lot about my brain, about our brain, you know, and so that's not something that we're taught. And so I know someone who hasn't been there, as well as that's been a story that I don't tell because I don't want, you know, to offend my sisters or, you know, my brothers on the inside and make it seem as if prison is a fun place. I mean, we was living in some of the most horrible conditions, you know, on the outside. So the rape, the violence, the beatings, the lack of, none of that ever seemed unnormal to me because that's what I came from. You know what I'm saying? Watching my mom free herself from an abusive, you know what I'm saying, relationship just so that she could work so hard that then, you know, so like I've always been like the mama, right, inside of the house. And so not to at all say that prison is just this comfortable place, but for me, I came home so excited. I wanted to be a prosecuting attorney. People think that's weird because, you know, I'm formerly incarcerated. And it's not about power. It's just I always said I wanted to represent as many people as I could. Yeah. And our prosecutors' obligation and responsibility. Who better to administer justice, what it says, the state of Florida versus whomever. I want to represent our state. And so came home excited, and I knew that our community, that the state of Florida would be a better place because of a Jhody Polk. And when I tried, I mean, at some point, right, you get the message that you're not belonged here. At least in prison, you know, where the conditions, you know, horrible, yes. But that was the first time I ever had a positive relationship with other women. I taught women how to read. We mourned together. We laughed together. It was the first time I'd seen, to me, what you see on a Broadway show. Art, you know, to see children growing up. I mean, it was life. Right. It was life. Right. I mean,
people don't understand that.
Life, the people, and that's our problem. We look at the outside instead of the inside.
Bonding experience. I'm almost at a loss for words, which never happens because the things that you're saying, they really resonate. I want to give, before we get out of here, I want to kind of give you the floor to leave the people with a lasting thought or whatever you want to talk about.
Yes, so I know there are people listening from, you know, all over, but I want to make it very clear that to me, change comes from sowing, you know, right where we are. Community is the hardest, you know, the hardest, you know, part to, I guess, to grow, but communities where the real change, you know, is going to be. I have spent a lifetime incarcerated to the thought of Gainesville. Florida, and to just even incarcerated inside, this body. It wasn't until till now. I'm excited. I know that we're coming from, a difficult year. I've been waiting for this political national stuff, to be over with, so that we can now get to focusing, right, where it matters, on families, on youth, on local, government and policy. And so I hope that, we will all tune in. Say our names now. I'm very excited about that, because that we have to get proactive. I went to NYU and learned about data and learned so much. In Florida, it's like we're worlds behind.
Yeah.
But I always said law school, the greatest benefit of me going to law school would be I get to learn what they knew and come back and tell it, right, inside of my community, to break down that gap in between who has power, who has knowledge. So we're going to be talking about knowledge. We're going to be talking about solutions. We're going to be talking about opportunities. I think the greatest power of a black man and woman is we have the gift to take nothing and turn that thing into something.
All right.
So come on, when I tell you, I don't care. My peace isn't determined by my children, my family, my mama, my car, my house. It's determined by who I am. And so I'm looking forward to just having a space where spirit and truth can be foremost. And then people, the power of people, can build on top of that. And we cannot do that alone. So looking forward to sharing myself, with the world, sharing the names and stories and life and value of both my brothers. I'm going to say Julius Irvin's name. I'm going to say AJ Irvin's name. I'm going to say Kelly Lumadou. I'm going to say Radessa Hall. I'm going to say Fluka. We're going to call it out, because it's not just people in prison. We got people incarcerated in schools, in neighborhoods, in their minds.
In their bodies. As you talk about that, man. Talk about what you mean by that, because I always find that interesting.
I went to Rollins Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been heavy set all my life.
Okay.
All my life. And when I tell you, my dad, he worked at GRU. He was like that dad that's just extinct now. That mama could just say daddy, and then you sit your butt down.
Right.
And so, like, we didn't get to choose what we wore, our hair, and we couldn't stay the night with friends, had curfew, chores. I mean, I had that type of, environment until, 12. And so the little boys didn't like me. My voice always sounded like this. And so I know with our people, right, anything that's right, it got to be white.
Yeah.
And so 10 years old, I'll never forget, I was standing out there in Robertson Heights. 10 years old, I looked at myself inside of the mirror, and I saw what all of the other kids, saw. And I hated myself. And at that moment, I told her I would never, ever be you again. And it wasn't until November 11th this year that the Jhody, the 10-year-old Jhody, even being in prison and all the amazing work that I did and working on myself all these times, I've been able to tolerate, right, that me and her were the same. But this past November 11th, 2020, that Jhody, all of myself came, into one. And so incarceration in your body is that voice.
Right.
We all, at the River Phoenix Center for Peace Building, we use the iceberg model. Typically you only see 15% of an iceberg above water. That's like people. Right. People only show you 15%. Mm-hmm. That other 85%, that thing is buried up underneath and that's what typically drives our behavior. So that little voice, that we be, scared or, tapped to, and for some people just have, long gone removed from it, that inner self. That doesn't get to, show up and show out because we have so many labels and rules. And so, to me,
it's definitely been a pleasure. I've definitely been enlightened a lot. I'm looking forward to the new show that you're going to be hosting right here on FLA Hip Hop Radio, FLAHipHopRadio.com, excuse me. Every Sunday, 2 to 4. And I'm excited, Jhody. I really want to thank you for all the work that you've done, all the work that you do, and all the work that you will do. Any last words?
Come get free with us, me and my friends, and we're going to be playing our music.
Nice.
I've been wanting a space for me and mine for so long.
Okay.
So we got our space.
Let's do it.
Come get free with us. You gonna say our names. You gonna say them names now. 2021, I don't think not one person can even imagine. But as we step into the age of Aquarius, you can trust your girl, Jhody Polk.
All right.
Hold on, and we will see you next week.
Awesome. All right, we up out of here, man. Jhody Polk, y'all. Don't go nowhere. Jhody, that was amazing. You're really good. I'm looking forward to it, man. What you just, that last little 30 seconds that you just